In this video, we are going to use all the concepts that we have learned in our previous videos, like execution context, different types of context like global execution context and function execution context, different phases of execution context like declaration mode and execution mode. Use all these concepts to try execute this code in a way that JavaScript engine will execute it. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing a JavaScript engine does is to create a global execution context that is created right here. Our execution context consists of two parts. One part is responsible for storing memory and another part the execution happens. So we'll start with line number 1. Right now we are in declaration mode. So on line number 1 we have a variable declaration named num_a. So we'll go ahead and create a box. The name of this box is num_a. And because we are in declaration mode, we'll not look at the value and we'll initialize this variable with undefined. Moving on to line number 2, we have another variable declaration called num_b and the value will be initialized with undefined. Moving on next is a function declaration. Because this is a kind of declaration, either a variable or a function declaration, we will go ahead and create another box, name it square, and we'll call it a function. Moving on to line number 8, we have a variable declaration called 4. We'll go ahead and create a box and the value will be initialized with undefined. The same thing will happen with username. Moving on to line number 12, we have a function declaration. And because it is a function declaration, we'll go ahead and create another box and name it sayHello. We'll call it function. So we'll skip line number 13 and 14 because it is a part of function declaration. Moving on to next, that is line number 16. It is neither a function declaration nor a variable declaration. So we'll skip this line. And in this way, we have completed our first phase, that is declaration phase. We'll move on to the next phase, that is execution phase. And in our execution phase, we'll look at things like function call or value assigned to the variable. So on line number 1, we can see a value of 21 getting assigned to a variable named num1. So the value undefined will be overwritten by the new value, that is 21. Moving on to line number 2, we can see a value of 20 assigned to a variable num_b. So undefined will be overwritten by the new value, that is 20. Next line is neither a value assigned to a variable nor a function call. So we'll skip this part and move on to line number 8. Here we can see the value returned from square function will be assigned to a variable 4. To get the value, we will have to execute this piece of code. And we know that whenever a function is executed, it creates a function execution context. So we'll go ahead and create the box. This is a function execution context of square function. Let's look at if there is any variable declaration inside square function or not. And as we have learned previously, even arguments are considered like a variable declaration. So here the variable declaration is num. Even function execution context will go through two phases. The first phase is declaration. In declaration, I'm only looking for declaration. There is only one declaration, that is num. So I'll create the box and call it num. The value will be initialized with undefined and there is no more declaration. So we will move from declaration mode to execution mode. And in execution mode, the value that is passed from here, that is num_a. So the value of num_a is 21. That will be passed as a value. So undefined will be overwritten by the new value 21. So next execution is using the statement return and we are saying num multiplied by num. So we'll go ahead and look for the value of num. So we'll go to the memory and ask what is the value of num, and we can see it is 21. And same is the case here. The value of num is 21. It will be multiplied and the value returned from here will be 441. And that will be assigned to the variable named 4. So undefined will be overwritten by 441. So as soon as a function returns, the function execution context will be deleted. Moving on to next line, that is var username is equal to Sam. Here the value of Sam is assigned to a variable named username. So I'll go ahead and change the value of username from undefined to Sam. Moving on, next is a function declaration. So we'll not be doing anything to this because it is not execution. The last line, that is line number 16, is a function execution. So the first thing it will do is to create a function execution context. This is the function execution context of sayHello. So this function execution context will go through declaration phase. So we will be looking at all the declaration inside this function for declaration phase. And as we can see, there is no declaration at all. So declaration phase will be over. We'll move on to execution phase. In execution phase, we are saying return hello username. And here we can see we will be looking for the variable named username. So we'll go into the memory. We'll ask for what is the value of username, and we'll not be able to find it because there is nothing here. And as we have learned in our previous videos, is like when you are looking for a variable and you could not find it, what do? Do you remember? So you bubble out to your parent, right? So that is exactly what will happen here. Because I was looking for a variable named username, so I came to my memory. I could not find it, and because of that, I will bubble out to the parent. So the parent is the global context memory. So I'll go to the parent and ask for the value of username. Will I find it or not? I will, because the value of username is Sam here. So I'll get the value, create the message, hello Sam, that will be returned from this message, that will be returned from this function execution context. And as soon as something is returned from execution context, the execution context gets deleted. And in this way, the execution of this function is over, and what we can see at last is the value returned from sayHello function got garbage collected because we are not storing or not doing anything with this value. At the same time, here if you look at the memory of global execution context, we can find num a has the value of 21, num b is 20, square is a function, 4 has a value of 441, username is Sam, and sayHello is another function. So in this way, we have completed the execution context of this code snippet following all the rules of execution context, global execution context, function execution context, and also the phases of execution context, that is declaration and execution phase.